Okay, so we're here tonight with Jarrett Adams. Jarrett is an exoneree from Wisconsin, and he's also a third-year law student at University of Loyola University Chicago, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, Jarrett, can you tell us how you first encountered the criminal justice system?
I was 17 years old, and I attended a college party over the weekend. It was in Wisconsin. I'm from Chicago, born and raised, and I told my parents that I was going to spend the night over at a friend's house, but we thought it would be a good idea to go to a college party in Wisconsin. And at the end of this party, I was accused, along with two other guys, of a sexual assault. It never happened. Me and my family, we had no real interaction with the police up until this point. So we were ill-prepared to defend against this. We didn't know what a good defense was or bad defense. We didn't have much money, so there was no way for my parents to hire a lawyer. So we were appointed a public defender. And long story short, I was found guilty in a trial, of the magnitude of rape that lasted, like a day and a half.
And then what was your sentence?
I was sentenced originally to serve 20 years in prison, but I remember standing up at sentencing and apologizing to the court and my family. But I said I couldn't apologize for a rape I didn't commit. The judge saw this as me being not remorseful, and she gave me an additional 8 years. So I had a 28-year sentence at 17. And the 8 years that was added on to my 20-year sentence was so significant because it made me, as a teenager, go from a 20-year sentence to medium prisons and medium security to having 28 years. It put me in the threshold of being sentenced to serve this time with people having 25 years to life. So it just dramatically changed my prison experience by being in a maximum security prison with people who were there for 25 to life.
And then what happened when you were in prison? How did you become involved with the Wisconsin Innocence Project?
Well, I continued to write letters. I was encouraged by a person that I was sailed up with at the time, and it was during a lockdown period of the prison where something happened. Someone was stabbed or something like that, and they locked down the entire prison for close to a week. And during this time, if you had phone privileges, they would bring the phone to your cell. And so I was sailed up with a guy, and I was having a phone conversation with my parents, and we were just discussing how another appeal of mine was just basically rubber stamped, through the Wisconsin court system, and just denied my appeal without answering any of my issues that I raised. And so as I concluded the phone conversation, this older gentleman who was my cellmate, he just was like, "Come down off the bunk for a second and talk to you." He was like, every day you go out, you play basketball, you play chess, you go work out, and you come back and watch TV. You're treating this as if you're at a 4-year college, and instead, you're in a maximum security prison. This is the first time I've ever heard anything about your case and you saying you're innocent. But if you are innocent like you say you are, you should be in the law library and writing people and trying to figure your way out. He was sentenced to serve 2 life sentences, so he wasn't going home, and he got a chance to read my transcripts, and he further encouraged me. He was like, I've never heard of a rape case where it was not a doctor there. You get 28 years, that's an ungodly sentence. So after that encouragement, I took that, and I continued to write people on a regular basis. I was sending out upwards of 40 letters a week. I went from saying, "Hey, look, I'm innocent," to saying, "Look, my case is like Strickland versus Washington, when an attorney failed to investigate and committed to a strategy without, locating witnesses and stuff. So the Wisconsin Innocence Project answered, probably like my third letter, and they came to see me. They looked over my transcripts, and they agreed to represent me and fight for my appeal.
And so how long did that process take then?
Well, that process took some time. I mean, because, appeals, they can go a year, 2 years at a time. I mean, they're not answered right away. So when a person is convicted of a crime, you are on a prison log of 1,000, other inmates, thousands of other inmates who are appealing their sentence. So we're talking basically, they came and saw me in year 3.5, 4. I didn't come home until another, 2.5, 3 years later. So we're looking at, from 1999, I was wrongfully convicted. And I didn't come home until 2006. So all of that time was basically spent fighting for an appeal, fighting to get my case heard by, and what I would say, an unbiased court. And it took time. That's the one thing about prison that, is missed. Time doesn't go slow in prison. It goes fast, extremely fast. You'd be surprised how one Christmas can turn into 5 or 6 Christmases with you sitting behind bars.
And so what was the claim? Was it ineffective assistance of counsel?
Yes. I mean, this young lady, after a night of, we went to a dorm party. So it was like the entire building was a dorm room setting, and there was parties on every floor. And this young lady said that me and 2 other guys snuck up a flight of stairs, raped her, and fled the building. My attorney did not even look into my case at all because, after the Wisconsin Innocence Project looked into it, I mean, there were several different witnesses who were like, no, we saw all of them. We saw them during, after, we saw all of them. That couldn't have happened. My attorney decided that because there was, in his mind, no evidence against me, he would go with something called a no defense theory. And that's called no witnesses and basically say, look, the state hasn't proved their case. Well, when you have a case that is filled with racial undertones with a white accuser and 3 black men, that's something that you just cannot do. You need attempted to fate of the jury. And that roll of the dice wasn't successful for me at all. The Wisconsin Innocence Project filed under ineffective assistance of counsel saying that, look, he committed to a strategy that was a ridiculous and unreasonable strategy without even investigating. The Wisconsin courts continue to deny my appeals and not answer any of my arguments. They were just like, well, he had a trial as a lawyer, chose the strategy, that was it. It took all the way up until I got to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals on a habeas petition. And all 3 judges unanimously agreed that my attorney was ineffective and negligent for not calling these witnesses. And with that, my appeal was granted, my case was overturned, and the courts ordered that my case either I be retried or I be released. Very shortly after the order came down, the prosecutor in my case filed a motion dismissing all of the charges against me. So I came home in 2007, no record, but there was definitely a lasting effect of having a 10-year gap in the resume.
Right. So how old were you when you came home?
I was 27 years old when I came home. So this happened when I was 17. I was incarcerated at 18, and I was turning 27 years old when I came home.
And then what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced after you were released?
I mean, some of the challenges I still face today. So, I mean, I can liken it to this. Imagine right now, everyone who is joining in on this online course, we are basically just trapped and in prison for a number of years. That doesn't mean that your bills are going to stop. That doesn't mean that the world is going to stop. Everything continues to go on without you. So when I was in prison, there was no email, there was no Google, there was no cell phone technology like it is used today. If you had a cell phone, it was the size of a kitchen table leg. That's how big they were back in 1998. People were using pagers. So coming home, it's a full reintegration back into society. You have to acclimate yourself back to everything that has changed since you have been gone, and everything that you haven't even encountered before you were in. So the struggle it was, and it is still today, definitely there's a financial chokehold placed upon a person who has been wrongfully convicted. Despite the numbers of what you see on the news and how you see people getting these big awards and big judgments, less than 1/3 of the population of people who have been wrongfully convicted have ever been compensated and will ever be compensated. And so there's a financial hole, and it's not just what's in your pocket. Everything nowadays is done by credit. Even when you go for a job employment, people look at your credit. So how do you explain to an underwriter at a bank or an employer why your last known address is a maximum security prison in Wisconsin? And it doesn't just go away. I've been home since 2007. I've been able to make it as far as I have by the grace of God, and just sheer determination, grit, and refusing to let those who supported me while I was in feel like their time was wasted. But I am still undergoing certain, what I call the tentacles of my wrongful conviction still reaching me. Other law students, they get, the federal loans and all that. I don't get that because my credit history isn't that. I don't have a cosigner, so I don't get that. Just the mental aspect is something that I can talk about, for hours on end. A lot of people come out of it in different ways. Everyone on this course can fall and trip. Some people will stay down longer than others, and that's the same thing with wrongful convictions. Some people come through and able to shake it off and put their life back together, and some people are never able to shake it off. There are no mental screens when you come home. There's no health care. There's no nothing. If you don't have, like I had, my mother's couch, then you're basically left with nothing. And that's just, it's really difficult to get started when you have so much, of what you're trying to get started doing in the hole. I basically was in the hole. I came out in the hole, so to speak. My credit didn't have any. I had a car. I had a job when I was 17. I was working as a baggage handler at an airport, and I had a car. And, it was parked, it was ticketed, it was booted, it was towed, a municipal violation was attached to it. All while I was in prison, this happened. And when I came home, you think it just went away? No, it didn't. So I had to figure out ways to get that taken care of just to get a license back. And no one did that but me and the people who supported me. So a lot of people don't get over that hurdle. And those hurdles are always there coming up.
Now, did the state of Wisconsin give you anything?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. They didn't give me anything. I am still hoping to get compensation from them. But right now, the state of Wisconsin is different. Just like every state has their own compensation laws. Some have what you would call fair, because I don't know how you could put a price tag on decades lost of innocence. I just don't know how you can put a price tag on that. But some attempt to. And some of their attempts are better than others. Texas, New York, Illinois is catching up. But Wisconsin is future. They are one of the worst in the states in terms of compensation. No matter how much time you spend wrongfully convicted in prison, you get a maximum of $25,000. It doesn't matter if you spend 1 year in prison or if you spent 21 years in prison, the maximum amount that you can get is $25,000 from the state of Wisconsin. If you accept that $25,000, you have to relinquish all of your rights to go after the state illegally, meaning that you can't file a lawsuit on the state. If you file a lawsuit, it has to be against a city or a municipality, police station, something like that. But you can't go after the state any further. So I haven't accepted that, and I'm not going to accept that. So right now, the Innocence Project and a lot of people up in Wisconsin are pushing to redo the bill that they have. The bill is grossly inadequate. It's a slap in the face. But one of the things that they're trying to get to be included is, mental health care, when a person comes home. Health care when a person comes home. I mean, I spent $10,000 on dental work alone. The valedictorians of dental school do not apply for prisons. So I came home, having to get work redone in my teeth. And it's just, it adds up with no insurance. It really does. So, if you don't have a lawsuit against a person, then you really are under the powers that be, whether or not they want to decide to give you something. The compensation statute, the standard is this. You have to prove yourself absolutely innocent to be able to get compensation. And absolute innocence is in the eye of those who are deciding, right? So, you look at something like that, and if it's not a DNA case or somebody admitting that it was them and not the other person case, your chances of getting compensated are slim and next to none. And in terms of lawsuits, you can't just find error and have a successful lawsuit. You have to find malicious intent. That too is very, very difficult to prove. Very difficult.
Now, when did you decide to go to law school, and how did that all work out?
I decided to go to law school very shortly after coming home. Because I realized that, in order to change something, the best way to do it is to become a part of it. And so I felt that, I would be able to offer something to my clients that not many lawyers can offer. And that's someone who has a perspective of being wrongfully convicted or just being convicted, period. Being in the legal system on the other end. And also going through and, getting my law degree and being able to help. I really feel like, I bring something that is very unique to the legal field. And that's my experience being in, fighting to get out. And now on the back end, I am going through all of the bells and whistles that you must have to become a lawyer. The going through law school, the passing the bar and stuff like that. So, I am just really looking at it like this. I may not be able to change the entire legal system with my efforts, but hopefully there's a movement. There's an inspiration that I give to others to change what is going on in the criminal justice system. Because right now, people who are exonerated are in a land of unknown. I mean, you don't even get reentry programs that people who are convicted of things get. You pretty much just get out, and it's like, all right, we made a mistake. Good luck in life. So. I just really feel like me being able to practice law, me being able to speak and to teach others will help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Jordan, could you
Sure.
speak a little bit closer to the microphone?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Jarrett, you also started a program, Life After Justice. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I started Life After Justice with another exoneree named Antoine Day. We were both sharing our story of how we came home. And now I remember coming home, and I had like $33 on my inmate account when I was being released. And I didn't have anything to go home with besides a jogging suit off of the canteen that I purchased, and also the orange shoes that, the state issue shoes that they give you. And so I remember them giving, mailing me a check, about a week later, and they charged me, they charged me like $17 for these shoes. I remember getting $17 back off of this check, off of this inmate account, because they charged me for the shoes that I had no choice but to go home with. And I was talking to Antoine, and Antoine was talking about how he was released, and because he had no clothes, he actually had to put on the clothes of someone who was recently sent to prison from the county jail, just so he could, walk home and have something to wear going home. So I continued to document, all of the things that I experienced in trying to put my life back together. And we came up with the idea of life after justice. And life after justice is basically, it is what the state should be doing, quite honestly. It is an organization that is meant to be a launching pad for those trying to put their life back together after wrongful convictions. People come home and they don't even know how to get an ID. And I can remember going down to the baby center down here in downtown Chicago, and I was waiting in a line to get my ID, and that line was just, oh my God, it was wrapped around the building. That's how long it was. And I waited in this line for about 2 hours. I get to the front of the line, and they're like, yeah, you can get your ID, but you need birth certificate or social security card. So I go over and I stand in the line for the social security card. I stand in there for about another hour. And they're like, yeah, you can get your social security card, but you just need your ID. So it's stuff like this that will completely just deflate a person and makes them just, not even want to put up with it. So we are having a house, an organization that will offer a stay to someone who doesn't have a place to stay. A lot of people come home and they're the last member of their family, so there is no family to stay with. We will also have a lawn care and snow removal business inside of the house. So that way guys, when they come home, they have an immediate means of making, money and saving up money and, being able to go out and do what it is that they want to do in life. We are working to get health care screening inside of Life After Justice, and also, financial advisors, basically a place that, all the way from how to balance a checkbook to how to tie a Windsor knot for your first job interview. This is what Life After Justice is about.
And are you trying to solicit funds in order to make that work?
Yes, we are. We are fundraising, but I came up with this idea because I would like for Life After Justice to sustain even after I have gasped my last breath. And I know that sustainability definitely is more attainable if we are not, relying solely on fundraising. So having the business inside of the nonprofit itself will give it the opportunity to pay the bills and to employ the guys when they come home and stuff like that. So basically, we will be fundraising, but we're fundraising to reach a certain amount to get the business up and running in the house. We will continue to accept donations, but we won't rely on them as much if we have this business set up and running in the house.
Yeah. Now, can you talk a little bit about the things that you think are the most egregious ills in the criminal justice system, the things that need reform the most?
In terms of wrongful convictions?
Yes,
or?
in terms of wrongful convictions.
Well, there's a couple different things. Like for one, I feel like this. Whenever you pit sides and you make this adversarial, justice is ignored because people are trying to win. They're not out for what's just. They're out for trying to win. If prosecutors win, they have opportunities to become head prosecutor or judge, climb their way up the ladder. If a defense attorney wins by any means necessary, he will be able to charge as much as he really wants and have a name out for himself. So when you pit these sides against one another, then you rob the justice system of justice. So I think that, one of the things I did in law school was I went and I studied abroad in London. And London has a system where it's not perfect, but we know that no system is perfect here in America. But they have a system set up where attorneys are just that. They're attorneys. They're not prosecutors solely, or they're not defense attorneys solely. Cases are assigned to them, and they are instructed to either be the prosecutor or either be, a defense attorney. And a lot of their rules of evidence are very different from our rules of evidence. Prosecutors don't have to turn over everything up until the last minute. And all of this hinders a defense, and basically allows people. It allows for people to be wrongfully convicted when they don't have all the evidence in front of them. So I think one of the things that we should do is this: there should be a separate entity that reviews all of the evidence against a person, and that evidence then should be given to the prosecutor and to the defense attorney at the same time. With what comes in, and that's it. There is no more investigating, going out and finding, this jailhouse snitch who said he was in a cell with this guy, all that crap that we see litter the wrongful conviction world in these cases. That's one of the things. Number one thing is this: all interviews should be videotaped. All police officers should have cameras on them. If we can have cameras on our phone, cameras on the back of our cars when we back up, cameras on watches, why can't we have cameras on the people who have other people's lives in their hands? I can never understand that at all, and that needs to be changed. I really do. That's another one thing that needs to be changed in the criminal justice system, is that everything should be filmed, videotaped. We've seen countless, wrongful convictions come about where a person who was innocent basically confessed because he was kept to be in the room for hours and hours and hours. That practice should stop. If I don't, confess to you in the first 30 minutes, how magically, am I confessing to you 30 hours later after being in the same room with no food, no water? I mean, it's because of the force that was applied. So it is a lot of things that are very simple in my eyes that can be changed. Now, the thing about it is we won't know if these changes will work until you see it get applied. So even some of the things that I'm saying right now, I have some that's like, well, that's not going to work, that's not going to work. Well, that may be true, but one thing's for sure, we know what's not working, and that's what we have going on right now.
Yeah, great. Do any of the, I have a room full of students here, and I'm just going to ask them if anyone has a question for Jarrett. Yeah, come up to the microphone. Are there questions as well from?
Yes, there's one question from a viewer online too.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I have a question. Do you feel people...
Can you speak up, please?
Oh. Hello? Okay, sorry. My name is Ashley, and I have a question for you. Do you feel people treat you differently after you're exonerated compared to before you're wrongfully convicted? Even though you're exonerated, when you share your story with others, do they give you like a different eye look than before?
I mean, I was a kid. I see, this is the thing. I was 17 years old. You're Ashley, right?
Yeah.
I was 17 years old, Ashley, and so I don't know what it's like to go to college and to experience that time and, find out who I am as a person and all that. I grew up in the prison system, so I don't know, what it's like before and stuff like that. But I will say this. Going through law school, I didn't share my story like that. I was another student, like in the class. And so, I didn't want privileges. I basically didn't want anyone feeling sorry for me and deciding to give me anything. So up until this last year of law school, whereas, as you law students know, it's pretty much, cakewalk from here on out. There was no one who really knew about, me and how much time I spent in prison and being wrongfully convicted. I mean, there was none of that. One thing that I have found, now that I speak and stuff like that, now that people do know, I mean, they're blown away. Because as many of my classmates have told me now, they're like, man, I would have never, ever been able to tell anything like that. And you go around smiling, you're in a good mood. They're like, I never would have known any of that. So, I mean, it's a couple different ways I can take that. I could take that as to say, I'm sad and, I'm down and look at all the time I've missed, or I could take it and, be appreciative of it. So I do know this. My story offers insight and inspiration to a lot of different groups. But for those who, look at me differently or may look at me differently, that's totally up to them. But I know the reality of it is this. Wrongful convictions happen. They do. They're getting closer and closer to people's homes now. And so now the topic of it and, the conversation about it isn't strange to have now because it happens, right? It happens and it happens often. And you have still wrongful convictions that are being unearthed from police tactics and stuff like that. So there will be a lot more conversations about this issue. It really will be. But I just keep pushing. I mean, I don't really, care too much. If people look at me differently, they can have their own opinion. I mean, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. One thing is for sure. You can look at it wrong, but you have to do nothing but admire and respect what I've done since coming home.
Absolutely. And you've done really well in law school, from what I hear.
Yes. I am. I'm hovering in the top of the class. I'll say that.
There you go. Does anyone else have a question? Is there a...
Yeah, Annie McKinney Becker asks, can you go after the accuser and the prosecuting attorney for the gross injustice you have incurred, as well as the states? Just my opinion, there should be federal laws to compensate you as a victim instead of state jurisdiction, and the prosecuting attorney and judges should have to should have a type of malpractice insurance. Thank you for what you are doing.
All right, thank you for your comment. There's prosecutorial immunity. That's another thing that needs to be read in the justice system. You're basically giving a prosecutor a handful of darts and telling them go throw it at the board and whatever sticks. You will have no repercussions for throwing these darts, and that's what's happening with prosecutors. I mean, they in a lot of ways are more powerful than any other person in the criminal justice system because they can decide the cases to bring and the cases not to bring, and the way in which they want to bring them, the charges that they want to charge. So there is no way to go after the prosecutor. This young lady, if I sued her, what would I get? What would I get? I wouldn't get anything. She doesn't have the money. The money is in the counties, the cities. That's where the money is, and it's unfortunate because the thing about it is this: if I trip and fall in the courtroom that wrongfully convicted me from a tort, I would probably get about $30,000. But I'm wrongfully convicted in this court, served close to 10 years, and the max I can get is $25,000. There's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that. You're talking about a system that is not set up yet to restore those back to their, original state. And I use that language for a reason, because when your conviction is overturned, they say this case is overturned and is being sent back down to its beginning stages, right, for either release or retrial. So why is there no attempt to put the person back into their beginning stages? Again, I had a job, I had a car. That car had a different color door than the rest of the car, but it was my car, So it's just stuff like that. It can't be replaced, and there's not even an attempt to replace it. There needs to be a system set up that every person coming home, and when I say this, let me be specific, because I don't want this to, become a loose category where you can't really determine a wrongful conviction from something else. If a person is considered an exoneree, then that person has had his case and his conviction overturned because evidence that should have and it would have been in front of the fact finders, there would be no conviction obtained. So that's an exoneree. That's a wrongfully convicted person. And if you have a person coming home who's an exoneree, there should be already something set up and in place. There shouldn't be an argument for funds, mental health care, and stuff like that. If I can, again, slip and fall, and the certain insurance company that gets sued can calculate my lost wages and stuff like that, how is there no attempt for that to be done for wrongfully convicted people? I mean, every year the cost of living goes up. So there's definitely a way that you can do it. And you can say, all right, for every year this person gets this and gets that, and no argument. The standard changes. I'm found guilty at a criminal trial where the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. But yet, when I come home, in order to be compensated, I have to reach a ridiculous standard that is basically even higher than beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's absolute innocence. Like, how does it change like that? There's a lot that is going wrong, and I just think that now that more and more cases of wrongful convictions are coming to light and this conversation is being had, that it will get better eventually. I would like to think that it will get better. But they need to speed this process up, because exonerees are coming home and some of them are losing their lives, waiting on a bag of money that never comes.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit, you mentioned race earlier in our discussion, and can you talk a little bit about some of the issues of race that you see that lead to wrongful convictions?
I mean, yeah, I can. I mean, I was accused by a young white college student of, raping her along with two other black guys. Somebody sent a chat question asking what happened to the other two guys. I mean, they're at home. They didn't rape anyone. Neither one of us raped anyone. So they're at home. One went to the Air Force, I think it was, the Air Force or the Marines, one or the other. And the other one, I am the godfather of his daughter that he just had, and he's having another baby, as come to think about it. So everyone's home and everyone's, living their life right now. But
were they convicted?
This is I can hear you.
Were they convicted?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Dimitri, my case was it was so ridiculous. So one of the defendants had his case severed. He had an attorney that his family was able to pay for, and I think they put their house up or something like that, and they were able to give him an attorney who actually had a name for himself out in Wisconsin. So his trial was severed from ours. Mine, along with Dimitri Henley, we went to trial where the attorneys decided not to present any evidence or any witnesses and stuff like that. They ended up finding us guilty. While I was in prison for the first year, my other co-defendant, Rovan Hill, his attorney was basically filing some motions because he was saying how there was no evidence in the case and how they were trying us basically with a case with no evidence. And so he lost the motions that he was filing, and he had to go to trial. As we were sitting in prison, I wrote him a letter, and I said, listen, I'm starting to remember a lot of the things, of the night, and you need to go talk to this person, that person, this person. I was playing video games with this guy in the room. And so his attorney went out, and he went to go and interview some of the people that I wrote him about. And he got the guy I was playing video games with to come and testify as well. And so that trial ended in dismissal. What happened was the police officer in our case magically said that she misplaced some notes, right? So these notes was of who? The one witness that basically, undermined the entire state's case. This witness was like, look, man, I've seen all of them the entire night. This girl invited them up. The one guy played video games, and then I seen all of them later on that night. And so She had already interviewed this guy at the beginning of the investigation, but she never turned over those notes to my attorney or to any of the attorneys in the case. So the courts dismissed all of the charges against Rovon Hill and basically left us in prison. They said that our attorneys went with a no defense strategy, so therefore they weren't going to call any witnesses anyway. So that's what our attorneys stuck with, and that's the case that we had, and they didn't overturn my case. So it took the Innocence Project to go back, present the same witness that, Rovon's case was dismissed on, and that's what got us home. So it was just a crazy turn of events that even in the face of evidence that presents our innocence, the court still were not willing to give us justice and overturn our conviction. They just weren't. The police officer committed a Brady violation by not turning all these notes. How is it that the only notes that she didn't turn over were the notes that helped us prove our innocence? It wasn't a mistake. It was on purpose. And the court said that my attorney decided on a strategy, and so therefore the police officer not turning over the notes in my case was harmless error. I don't know how that was harmless error, but that's what the court decided. And so this isn't just wrongful conviction cases. This is all, all the cases in the criminal justice system where you see race playing a factor. Race does play a factor. You can look at the numbers, and the numbers, they support that. When you have a white accuser, a black perpetrator, just look at the numbers. People are going to jail and being convicted at a higher rate when you have that. A lot of the people who have been wrongfully convicted and who have had their cases overturned, predominantly black, predominantly brown. And why is that? Well, a lot of the areas that these convictions are coming out of are underprivileged areas. People who don't have a lot of money, who can't afford defenses, who don't really know how to read, bigger than a newspaper. So you have a lot of false convictions. You have a lot of people with low IQs who are being coaxed into committing into saying that they committed acts that they didn't. So a lot of that plays into the race of things. But specifically in my case, look, you had a white young lady accusing 3 black guys of raping her. No matter what we said, this little town in Wisconsin that we were in was not trying to hear it.
Yeah. And you've also talked quite a bit about class and how important it is to be able to afford an attorney and some investigation services for your case. Do you want to expand on that at all, how important money is?
You said, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I said you also talked quite a bit about class and how important it is to be able to have money so that you can get a good defense attorney, be able to do investigations. I just wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit more about the role of class in wrongful convictions.
It's a huge problem. It's evident, right? When you don't have the resources, you don't have the outcome. A lot of people were outraged at the O.J. Simpson, verdict. But it's like, well, wait a minute, you set the system up so that if you have an abundant amount of resources and can pay for the best of the best, then you can get the best of the best results. So, it works the same way when you have people who don't have resources and have to go off of public defenders. Now, there's nothing wrong with public defenders because, I worked for a very long time as an investigator at the Federal Public Defender's Office once I came home. So I've seen some great public defenders. But they're swamped. They're overwhelmed. Where the public defender has investigators, the prosecutor has investigators, meaning they have, ATF, FBI, you name it, right? Police departments and stuff like that. So the sides that are set up are definitely not set up fair. And you have a person who has, his life in the hands of a public defender, and not all public defenders are bad or don't want to work. It's just some of them are just so overwhelmed that they can't do a good job with it. And these cases result in convictions, because they didn't have the time or didn't have the resources to put into them. And then if you look at it, you look at the prison system itself, and you'll see that, it's filled predominantly with black and brown young men. And that is because, if you look at the areas where they're from, underprivileged, most of them, a lot of them have public defenders, or to be honest with you, most of them plead guilty. So it's not just a wrongful conviction, but I mean, it speaks to the entire justice system itself.
Yeah. Are there other questions?
Yes. Kelly and William both asked questions about a similar topic, so I'll just read both of them if that's okay. And you can choose to answer which parts are perhaps most relevant. So Kelly asks, regarding the lack of assistance available to exonerees once they're released, do you think states are hesitant to provide these resources because it means they have to acknowledge their wrongdoing and accept blame? Or does it have more to do with resources simply not being available for them to provide? And then William asks, do you see the federal government needing to be involved to get some consistency in the states having responsibility for compensation and for time limits to remove all conviction data that would prevent an exoneree from moving on with their life, education, job interviews, etc.?
Those are great questions, Kelly and William, and I absolutely agree. Like, what I'm doing with my law degree is this. After I graduate, I have a clerkship in the same court that overturned my conviction in the 7th Circuit. So the entire time that I'm here, I am going to be figuring out a way to bring an equal protection action against, first, the state of Wisconsin. Because listen, you can't have these proponents we're tough on crime and we're tough on making sure that the public is safe, saying this on the one hand, and then when people come home from wrongful convictions, they release them to nothing, endangering the community, basically. Because, Gwen, you're aware of Stephen Avery, but I'm not sure if a lot of other people are. So I'll tell you all a short story about Stephen Avery to help me get to this point. So now Stephen Avery was wrongfully convicted of a rape that he didn't commit. He served 20-plus years in prison. And DNA proved his innocence, and that it wasn't him, that it was actually someone else who was already incarcerated for a number of rapes in Wisconsin. So now Stephen Avery comes home. He comes home the same way I did, the same way all his honorees did. To absolutely nothing. Excuse me. Now, he stood to get a significant amount of money from his lawsuit because it was just pretty clear and convincing in his case. So now he's staying in a trailer on a desolate land that his family owned because he didn't have a place to stay. And he and his nephew ended up committing the murder, and I think it was a murder and a sexual assault of a young lady. I'm not sure the exact details of how she got to this trailer park, or I'm not sure. But I say that to say this. There are a lot of people from Wisconsin that I'm still staying in touch with, and when we were discussing this, they were saying how even in prison, Stephen Avery had mental issues that were very, very, noticeable. And so the state of Wisconsin released him, didn't do a mental health care evaluation, didn't offer any mental health care, no screening, no anything, no nothing. Basically endangering the community. And that's what they do to all the cases of wrongful convicted people. You don't know how the person who went through such trauma is dealing with it. You just don't. Just like a person who goes to war and they come home and they're shell-shocked and have postpartum, depression and all type of things, going through their mind, through their head. I mean, it's the same way with exonerees. And so if you look at it to answer William and Kelly's question, how can the government not get involved in something that is clearly cutting out a class of people and leaving them to nothing? There are three people who go to prison. There are people who go to prison, there are three people who are released from prison, I should say. There are people who are released from prison because they mandatory release, meaning that they served out their entire sentence and they mandatory release, or they're paroled out, or the conviction is overturned and they're wrongfully convicted. So of these three people, the only people who get absolutely nothing are people who are wrongfully convicted. When I came home, I attempted to get into a reentry program. The reentry program let me in one day, only to tell me the next day that I could no longer be a part of the reentry program because their money was tied to grants that specifically had a head count to how many convicted felons that are in their program. I'm not a convicted felon, so I'm not in their program. So now you have a class of people who, in my opinion, are being discriminated against. You don't get the reentry programs. You don't get the job readiness programs that come with the state grants and all that type of stuff for people who have been, released from prison because you're not a felon. You are wrongfully convicted and in a land of unknown. So the government has to come in. They have to come in because of several different reasons, and one I think Kelly pointed out. You have states all over the place. Some have $50,000 a year with mental health care and all that type of stuff and health care. Some have $25,000 max, and some don't even have anything at all. And when you have that type of all over the place and disorganization amongst the states, that's the reason why there was a war to unify this country, for there to be unification amongst the states. And this is an issue where there's a class of people who are being discriminated against. When you come home, you don't get anything, but yet you suffer the same things with the people who do get something. Yeah, I don't get the chance to get into reentry programs, but I have to explain to people, where I've been for 10 years and stuff like that. So it's wrong all the way around the board. I think that these states aren't doing what they're supposed to do because, they don't want to say that they were wrong. That's something that they don't want to do. And B, I just don't think they know how to address it. It hasn't hit close enough to home for one of them. Maybe, hopefully this doesn't happen, but maybe when someone close to a decision maker in these states, who have putrid compensation laws, maybe if something happens where, a wrongful conviction hits close to home, maybe you change the tide of how they feel about it. But right now, they're all over the place. They're putting, other things above compensation for wrongfully convicted. And let's just be honest, there's still a stigma attached to people who have been in prison. Had I not been on this, series with you all and told you my story about me being wrongfully convicted, you would have never guessed that. We would just be having a conversation with another student, and you would have never guessed it. But there's still a stigma attached. These TV shows, Black is the New Orange, or whatever the heck that crap is. You have Oz and all these prison TV Dateline specials and all that type of stuff. There's a stigma attached that only people in prison are angry, mad, and just want to do wrong. And so even if you're wrongfully convicted, you're still fighting that stereotype and that stigma. And, the states are looking at it like, look, do we want to make millionaires out of a bunch of angry, mostly black and brown men? No, not willingly. We're not going to do that. You're going to have to make us do it. And that's pretty much what's going to have to be done. There's going to have to be some litigating to get this issue solved.
Are there questions from the students? Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Jarrett. My name is Joe. And going off your last question.
I can't hear, I'm sorry.
Okay. My name is Joe, and talking about what you were just talking about, your reentry programs. Obviously, the laws need to be changed, or some types of standards need to be set or changed. As a third-year student, that you're going to be in your law career next year, have you thought about going into the legislature at all, or perhaps influencing some or promoting a candidate in the legislature so that some of these laws and standards could be changed? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. There are things going on right now in legislation and efforts that are being done to get laws enacted and changed. But look, it's going to take litigating. People are out here dying and suffering right now, waiting on legislators to pass a bill that's been sitting on their desk for months on end. So, you know, I went $100,000 plus in debt, $100,000 plus in debt to get my opportunity to litigate the shit out of the state of Wisconsin, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm not waiting on them anymore. I'm going to do this clerkship next year, pick the brain of all the federal judges I get the opportunity to, take notes, and as soon as I'm done with my clerkship, I'm filing an equal protection action claim against the state of Wisconsin, and that'll push their pen a little bit faster.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we were hoping will come out of this course that's online, that you're participating in now, is to raise the awareness of the general public so that they can pressure their legislators to try to support this kind of reform, either through specific bills or just a general sense of we need to reform the system, we need to get it right. So I don't know if you want to talk to that about that at all, just how important it is to get the word out that there are wrongful convictions and that there are things that need to change.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it's going to take many working parts to get this done. So I'm not discrediting what the efforts of legislation can do and pushing the bill and stuff can do. I'm not, discouraging that tactic at all. I'm just speaking in general about what I'm going to do, because I know that I've been seeing and waiting for this bill to pass in Wisconsin ever since I've been home, and it hasn't passed. And a lot of people are waiting on it and just waiting on it, and it hasn't passed. So I think that the voice that the population has together can move mountains, and we've seen it. I mean, just 5, 6 years ago, we would have never thought that this country would recognize, gay rights and lesbian rights and marriage, and we would have, they just weren't buzzing, right? But as soon as stars and the population as a whole started saying, look, this isn't fair to not acknowledge, the right of a person to be with who they want to be with, and put things like, okay, well, if you're not married to a man or a woman of opposite sex, then that person can't get, the benefits that are, just all type of nonsense that was going on. So it's like now we are recognizing it, states are recognizing it, and the states are following suit. They're falling in line now, like, look, this is what we're going to have to do. So that's exactly what's going to happen, what's going to have to happen with wrongful convictions. And using that again, there was a stigma, that was placed upon the lesbian and gay community. For years and years and years, it was an unfair stigma placed upon them, and it took a lot of vocal, influential people to speak up in order for it to change. And that's exactly what's going to have to happen in the wrongful conviction world. I mean, there are people, who are continuing to elevate themselves up into I'll just say this for lack of a better term, the world of acceptance. There are people like Brian Banks, who working now with the NFL, that should be an opportunity that's not missed. That should be an opportunity to every chance you get, say, look, there are many people just like me who have been wrongfully convicted and who do not have opportunities like me to be doing this and to be doing that. That's something that you can't miss, We have to be vocal. I know this for a fact. The fact that I'm elevating up into this legal career is giving me more opportunities to do exactly what I'm doing now, to speak. And my tone and what I say will not change. There needs to be something done to how exonerees are treated when they come home. Because we deal with the same thing as convicted felons coming home, but yet we aren't privy to the same things that can help you get your life back together. So there has to be a vote. There has to be a voice. There has to be a continued recognition that this happens in society, and that we have to figure out ways to keep it from happening. I mean, this course is a great idea, and I'm thankful for being a part of it, because it is a way of getting the word out. Even if it's just 8 people online right now, it's a way of getting it out and spreading the word, to get people to realize that this happens, this is an issue, and it needs to be taken care of. There's a trickle-down effect that can't be missed. And you have to aggregate all these things when you look at it. So I'm wrongfully convicted, right? It's not just me that is affected. Well, my family is affected by this. You know, people who are wrongfully convicted that have kids, their kids are affected by it. Their families are affected by it. You have people who come home, you know, and they're the only branch of their family tree left. And it's just unfair. It's totally unfair. You know, I just recently buried my uncle, and it really bothered me because, you know, 2 years was wild from him and for me as well. I went from, you know, before I went to prison, you know, there was get-togethers and cookouts and having a good time. And now that I come home, you know, I'm taking people to dialysis treatments, doctor visits, buried my uncle. So that's 10 years lost. And that affects, you know, so many more people than those who are wrongfully convicted when you look at it like that. And it's a real conversation and consideration that needs to be had when people are you know, deciding not to attempt to make a person whole by giving them compensation. And I'm not just talking about financially. I'm talking about, you know, compensating them, you know, mentally, you know, health care, all that type of stuff. So there's a lot of working parts that we can continue to work together to get this out there. And one thing's for sure, you know, I won't stop having this real conversation because it's very real. What happened to me could and has happened to a lot of people. When you're accused of a rape, it's just he say, she say. Look at the Vanderbilt players right now, you know, with the Vanderbilt football team and stuff like that. My case is really no different than that. The only difference is this. I wish there were cameras everywhere in this dorm room. Because then we never would have been charged in the first place. No one snuck up and stared. That was a ridiculous thing. But it was a he say, she say. And when you have a white accuser accusing 3 black guys, who do you think they want to believe? No matter what. So it's just a conversation that needs to be had. It's very easy to be wrongfully convicted. It's not hard at all. Some people think that, oh, well, I don't really be around that type of stuff. Come on. Look at some of the cases where this has happened. And when it happens, I mean, it's just on top of you. You think you know what you're going to do, but you really don't.
Yeah. I think we're probably out of time. Is there one last?
No more questions, but Pat says, Jarrett, you are a real inspiration, a great role model, and making a difference.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Jarrett, so much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
All right. Thank you. Have me again.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.